from your perspective, are funds accounted in the budget for any wage increases, I guess the retroactive side?
Mm-hmm.
Police and fire union, there's a lot of confusion out in the public about if there's anything in there to cover this.
There is, and it's a very difficult thing because we certainly don't want to tip our hand as to exact amounts that we're offering. We have certain goals in our negotiations. We want to achieve savings that will be long-lasting, not just in 1 year, because quite frankly, the level of benefits that we have on the table for all that are currently in all the union contracts will not be sustainable to this city in future years. So we have our eye on the prize as to insurance coverage, some give-backs on terminal leave, some other leave time, but insurance is the big key.
Right.
So in order to gain some of those concessions, we have to consider raises.
Okay.
We have looked at the recent arbitration awards, and our numbers that we're thinking about for increases are within, what the arbitration awards have been in this local area.
Over which time period? Is this for the last year, or when you say the arbitration?
The current arbitration awards.
So that's
this year.
For this past year.
That's in this year. I mean, for 09 and now going into 010.
Okay.
Most recent arbitration.
Okay, I think that's very useful for people to understand that, because there's certainly a lot of blindness in terms of, the rumors, as you well know.
Yeah. One thing I do want to say, I mean, I know it's everybody's opinion, and I've heard it. I think one gentleman said it last night at the council meeting, that he thinks anything more than zero being offered is too much. That will never happen. It's not realistic. First of all, the city will not gain the concessions that we're asking for, which are going to have exponentially, there's going to be greater savings over the years. For instance, in insurance, as costs go up, and they are going up 20% this year, we'll have a little bit of savings this year because we're not into it yet. But next year, as those costs go up, exponentially we'll be saving more.
And you're talking about the healthcare costs.
Healthcare. And then secondly, if we offered zero, any union, we have 6 of them, would say no deal. And the 2 biggest ones, police and fire, and there's 4 of them, the firefighters and then the superiors, and police and then the superiors, they would go to interest arbitration. And if you've seen the awards, and I have records of all of them, you would not get zeros. You would get anywhere between 3.5% and 5%, which is the current rate, and you would not get any concessions, because the arbitrators don't look at that. They look at salaries, and they may look at health care, but not too often unless you really demand it. But they're never going to look at vacation days. I mean, this is historical information.
Right, they separate the two. I think that, some people I don't really want to go down the arbitration discussion path, because honestly, that's really, I think, counterproductive. No, I think it's good for people to understand it. And
what we're up against.
I want to make sure that the public knows about it, because I agree with you that it's not realistic. At the same time, there's been some recent stories, I think, on NJ.com about last spring where arbitration awards were in a different vein from what they historically have been in New Jersey. But I don't really think that anybody in the city from the government side would be, frankly, wise to throw that wild card out there. It leaves so many factors unknown. So in that regard, I mean, what's your feelings about that? About leaving, people that would be arguing, well, let's go to arbitration.
Well, I think they're uninformed, and I also think that one of the problems with settling a contract so late, and our police and fire contract expired December 31st, 08, and settling so late, you do have the issue of retroactive pay. But we're trying to get these contracts signed as soon as possible to eliminate that much retroactive. And that is exactly what's in the budget, by the way, the retroactive pay. We also want the contracts, signed because it makes it easier to budget. We're also structuring the contracts so that it'll encourage people to retire in the next several years. But
To generate some additional savings.
Well, yes, and we can reduce reduce our personnel costs, which make up more than 50% of the budget, through attrition. And with arbitration, I don't think people understand, it doesn't happen overnight. We're here right now, and we're right on the fringe of resolving at least 2 contracts. We would be out another 2 years through arbitration. It takes at least another year. So when it's finally settled, you still have to go back and give retroactive pay back to 2008. So your costs are much greater. The sooner we wrap this up, the sooner we get rid of the retroactive pay, and then we start realizing some savings.